Salutations, crustaceans. I'm Lobster, and today we're going to be upgrading our Sire V7 stock tuners, which are a bit on the heavy side, for some Hipshot licensed ultralight tuners. Let's do it. This is a headstock. Specifically, the headstock of my Sire V7 Vintage. I've heavily modified this bass already with some DiMarzio Area J pickups, as well as an all-bridge drop-in Sire replacement bridge, and a Sadowski onboard preamp. That's right, a Sadowski drop-in onboard preamp, just dropped right in there in replacement of the stock Sire preamp, and I think it's a big improvement overall, and this is actually my favorite jazz bass now. But it is missing one thing, and that is some ultralight tuners. I've criticized the stock Sire tuners in the past, especially on their higher end basses, and this is definitely considered a higher end bass in my eyes at $700 and something brand new. So I purchased this used secondhand off a Reverb somewhere for around $450, I believe. But regardless, these tuners aren't the best, and they are heavy as well. The full set of tuners without the additional hardware like the bushings and stuff is about 3/4 of a pound. And the Hipshots reduced that by over a third. We go from about 3/4 of a pound to under a half a pound. That is a big weight reduction of over a quarter pound right off the headstock. And I think that is a big deal in making these instruments a lot more balanced. Now, I've already done this mod to my Sire P10 as well as my Sire V5 fretless. But a lot of people have asked me how I do it, and there is a compatibility issue which you may run into, but we have a solution for that, and I'm going to show you that in this video, so be sure to stay tuned. But let's get started. You guys know what you need to do. Go ahead and pinch that like button so my hand will turn back to normal. Thanks. Now, first off, let's go over the tools that we're going to be using today. There are a few, but none of them are really out of the ordinary. First, we have our drill. And this is using, I believe, a 2mm drill bit. I don't know what that is in inches. I'm American too, like I should be using inches, but whatever. It's a tiny drill bit, small enough for the tuner screws that we're going to be drilling for, because the Hipshots do not use the same screw pattern, so you will have to drill one additional hole. If you ever decide to bring the bass back to stock, the stock tuners will cover that hole, however, so fear not, modders. Anyways, we'll need the drill, screwdriver, scissors, and I'll tell you why in a second, painter's tape. Going along with the scissors, you're going to ask why I don't tear it, but again, we're going to tell you in a second because there is a compatibility issue that we are going to get around today. And finally, a 19mm socket here, and this is to tighten the Hipshot tuners onto the headstock. But first things first, let's go ahead and remove the strings from this bass and remove these stock tuners. Let's get started. Okay, we have the stock tuners removed, however, the stock bushings are still in place. Now you may be wondering, how do we get these out? Sometimes you just may be able to push it out, but other times that might not work. So what I recommend is getting a smaller socket and a rubber mallet or a hammer, and just be very gentle and just give it a few taps, and it should be able to come out eventually. So let's go ahead and do that here. You can also just force it out with a little socket here. Just be careful about what's in front of you, so beware. Okay, we have the bushings out and the holes are bare. So now let's go ahead and install the Hipshots. But first, here's the compatibility issue that we're going to be running into today. These are the stock bushings here. When we pop them into the holes, they wiggle around quite a bit. That's because these are 16mm bushings and the holes for Sires are 17.5mm. So we have to make up for that somehow, otherwise the tuners are going to end up being all uneven and not looking great. So let me show you a trick how to do that. For that we're going to need another set of bushings as well as the washer that goes underneath the bushings. We're going to need 2 of those. And some painter's tape. Painter's tape is an okay solution, but you can also use like aluminum tape or something along those lines and it'll compress less. But painter's tape, masking tape, any sort of thick tape is going to help quite a bit here. So now I'm just going to put the washer through both bushings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them facing one another like that. And we are going to go ahead and start running painter's tape around both of these. Now I just have this thin stuff here. It doesn't really matter the quality of the painter's tape, just as long as it's sticky enough to stick to itself. And these bushings. So we're going to start out with a little bit on one. And then we're going to stick the second one in there. We go, hello friend, I'm going to be hanging out here too. And be like, okay, I guess I really don't have a choice. No, you don't. So now we're going to go ahead and I usually use maybe about this much. I have no idea how much this much is. Looks like maybe about a couple feet. You may need a little bit more or a little bit less, and you'll be able to gauge that depending on how much wiggle room there is in there. You shouldn't have any wiggle room, but it still should be loose enough where you can turn it freely to tighten the tuner. So let's go ahead and start twisting. Be sure to get it nice and tight on there too. Just take your time. And again, the washer should be there right underneath where the socket is going to go to tighten it. So the washer should be on the outside of the painter's tape. If you haven't done that, go ahead and rewind and fix that, because that's a very important step. And just make sure that the tape isn't going up against the washers too much, and it's pretty much just in the middle. Okay, that should be good enough to try out for now. Now we're going to take our scissors and cut this in half. There we go. And then we're going to use our scissors and just clean up the edges a little bit. And let's go ahead and do a test fit. Oh yeah, that is nice and snug in there, but we'll still be able to turn it with our socket to tighten the tuner. Let's go ahead and install this one now. And then you can just align it roughly. We're going to go ahead and do a final alignment check once we've installed the rest of the tuners. And from there, we're going to drill our holes and be good to go. We'll put on our strings and notice a big difference. But for now, let's go ahead and install the rest of these tuners. Now that the tuners are installed and everything is aligned, I'm just going to go ahead and do one final check, tighten the bushings, and do one final alignment check, and then we're going to go ahead and drill. One great tip, which I highly recommend you do to avoid drilling through the headstock, is using a bit of painter's tape, and then hold a screw next to the drill bit, and just see how far the screw goes, and mark it off with some painter's tape. That way, you're going to be able to keep yourself safe from any mishaps. Anyhow, let's go ahead and do our final alignment check and start drilling. Finally, let's go ahead and screw the Hipshot screws into the headstock and secure the tuners and string her up. And here we have it. We have fitted lightweight Hipshot tuners to our Sire V7 Vintage. I notice a big difference in terms of the weight on the headstock. It is definitely a much more balanced instrument now. Again, we are shaving off a 1/4 pound of weight off of the headstock here. Think about that in hamburger form. Delicious. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link down below to Hipshot's website, and you can buy these tuners yourself. Again, they do make bushing adapters, but I don't think they make the appropriate adapter for this particular bass. So the tape method, again, is a great way to get a tuner to fit if you have a little bit of wiggling in the tuner hole. But that is it. Go ahead and let me know what you think of this video, as well as the Hipshot tuner upgrade, in the comments down below. And let me know if you've ever done this yourself or if you plan to be doing this. One last thing I want to mention is the holes that are left over from the stock tuners. You can use some wood filler, fill them in, and it'll look good enough. Honestly, how much time do you spend looking at the back of your headstock anyways? The benefits that this offers far outweighs the holes on the headstock. So, yeah. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to like, subscribe, join our Discord, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about our Hipshot tuner upgrade for our Sire V7 Vintage. And as always, until we groove again.